my talk sort of goes with Sobley somewhat. And I am working with Sobley a bit on the conference he's planning in December. This is based on a five-dimensional field. And basically, reality, I believe, is a five-dimensional, not four-dimensional space-time, but five-dimensional space-time. Many different research efforts right now are progressing or evolving toward a single 5D model of physical reality. Superstrings, which were originally 10, 11 dimensions, are evolving into brains, and they're suggesting that the brains or the membranes they're working with are 4 dimensions, curved in 5-dimensional spaces, or double 4-dimensional brains that Hawking talks about in his book, The Universe in a Nutshell. You have pure 5D theories, my theory of sheets, which is the extension of Einstein, Bergman, and Bartlett's theory of 4-dimensional sheet curved in the 5th dimension. Induced matter by Wesson up in Canada, called STM theory, space-time matter theory. You have various 8-dimensional models by Tiller and others. Basically, these are double 4-dimensional models embedded in a 5th dimension. The 10D models are basically double 5-dimensional models, and the brain theory people are talking about the same thing. If you want the 11-dimensional model of the supergravity theory of the 80s, that's just a double 5D model embedded in the 6th dimension. So basically, I'm coming from that point of view, and it seems like all the other theories are evolving toward a single 5-dimensional model. Now, depending on your different points of view from within a 5-dimensional physical reality, the biofield is either a product of, an extension of, or a specific structural configuration within the 5-dimensional single field. And the idea of a single field is Einstein's. That's what he is aiming for. He's aiming for a single field out of which all other natural fields, physical fields, evolve. As such, the biofield can easily be described by Einstein-Kaluza 5-dimensional model of the space-time continuum. Now, I'm starting from a simple hypothesis of a real 5th dimension. Once I assume this hypothesis, we ask, what physical form or structure does this 5th dimension take? We have a 4-dimension, in our 4-dimensional space-time, we have points, and each point would be extended in a line in the 5th dimension. But the width of our 4-dimensional space-time must be very, very small because we cannot sense or otherwise detect the 5th dimension. And we can rule out both the infinitesimally thin 4-dimensional space-time sheet, including Oscar Klein's quantum limit in the Kaluza-Klein theory, as well as infinite extensions in the 5th dimension, that the 5th dimension is infinitely extended. And there are brain theories now that are assuming the 5th dimension is infinitely extended so that retains the weak gravitational field, because then gravitons are just lost off in the infinitesimal extension 5th dimension, which guarantees a weak gravitational field. I'm excluding those totally. They're not quite possible. The 5th direction is macroscopically extended. That was demonstrated by Einstein, Bergman, and Bartman in 38 and 41. Instead of infinitesimally extended, as in the Kaluza-Klein model. And the Kaluza-Klein model is the basis of the superstring theories, modern superstring theories. So they regress, and they're going towards 5-dimensional theory with their brains or membranes. And there's a joke, B-R-A-N-E, or are they using their brains, B-R-A-I-N-S. I used that in Tucson last month. They didn't like it. Our 4-dimensional continuum is just a very thin sheet which cuts across the 5th dimension. The sheet is continuous in the 5th direction, since it is actually a denser portion of the single 5-dimensional field. It's the densest portion of the single field of 5D space, out of which true fields evolve. Gravitational field, electric field, magnetic field, nuclear fields, weak and strong. The sheet therefore has an effective width of about the diameter of a proton times the fine structure constant. Under these circumstances, Kaluza's restriction is that 1, all points in the 4th dimension are extended to an equal length in the 5th direction, and they form closed loops. So if you imagine our 4-dimensional space-time is a sheet of paper, each point 4-dimensional space-time stretches around, comes to the bottom back to the bottom of the sheet, so you have a closed loop, and all the loops are of equal length. That is Kaluza's 1921 theory. Those are the only restrictions he put on it. The 5th dimension has the structure of a single polar Riemannian sphere, which explains torsion and particle spin within the sheet. And matter actually occurs within the sheet. Our material world is within the 4-dimensional sheet. Elementary particles are folds, as in protons, bumps, electrons, and burble neutrinos within a sheet. And so this would be a proton. Here's a light wave extending in the fifth direction. You've got three space across here, fifth dimension up, and time goes into the sheet. So the sheet folds over here, and that causes a proton. So this is what would be the five-dimensional volume of a particle. It's not a singularity like they presently think, because this extends around, goes all the way around, back up the other side, and closed loop. And so this is particle boundaries, and this would be empty space, and the particles within the particle boundaries here. The effective width of the sheet determines the quantum of action upon which all quantum theories are based, which means quantum theory exists only within that sheet, as in all material particles are within that sheet. Otherwise, all particles follow the physical restrictions known as special theory of relativity. So, when particles move at some relative speed, they undergo Lorentz-Fitzgerald contraction. This squeezes the particles by the effective volume, forcing the interior of the particle up along the fifth direction, increasing the particle's fifth dimensional aspect as a function of increasing kinetic energy. In other words, if this particle is moving through time near the speed of light, the width right here will squeeze, but the overall volume here of the particle in fifth dimensional space will stretch up. So this particle goes fast, it stretches further in the fifth dimension. As it goes slower, less kinetic energy, it comes down closer to the sheet. Our normal four-dimensional space-time here in the sheet. Now, I have here a model. Normal chemical reactions exchange kinetic energy between molecules, which means the particles move up and down the fifth dimension when undergoing chemical reactions, as I just said. We have a mixture here of O2 molecules and H2 molecules. These are H2 molecules, those are O2 molecules. This is a sheet. This is static. There's no time here. So we're only looking at the edge of the sheet. And so you have these particles here. It's a chaotic mixture of oxygen and hydrogen gas. You stick a match to it, what happens? Anybody? It explodes, and you get water. Okay, so here's water. These are water molecules extended in the fifth dimension. You have a few H's left over, a few O2's left over. That is a chemical reaction. Now what that forms is, from the top, from the energy to 1, it forms a continuous line. We have to measure that continuous over time. And that would be a simple chemical reaction. With equilibrium reactions, this forms a recognizable reciprocating order pattern of aspect along the timeline in the fifth dimension. In other words, a pattern of field density variations is imprinted within the single field occupying 5D space. Now, let me do an equilibrium reaction here. Okay. There's an equilibrium reaction like that. And what happens is you get a pattern across time. Now, when you put different equilibrium reactions together, what you've got is the biofield. It would be possible for different equilibrium reactions to form a common connected quantum entangled interaction. The quantum entanglement is across 5D space between the particles. The quantum occurs within the sheet, while entanglement occurs within across the fifth dimension of the sheet. Each reaction supplements and complements the other reaction, such that each reaction feeds and or contributes energy to the remaining common chemical mixture, yielding a mutual self-reacting chemical complexity or reaction state. The resulting pattern of density variations, five-dimensional single field, form a single complex pattern. The single complex pattern could theoretically be modeled as a chaotic complexity by an equation called the attractor. When the chemical mixture becomes self-sustaining, all these different equilibrium reactions act together, we can say that life has emerged from the physics of the single five-dimensional field structure. This life is the vital force, life force, or la vitale, or the biofield that others have searched for centuries. There's something extra that goes beyond the simple part-by-part mechanics of the living system. So the biofield is actually a structural field density configuration or pattern in 5D space-time. But all other fields are just the same. Whether you're talking gravitational, electric, magnetic field, they're all just different configurations of a single five-dimensional field. So this is a true light field or a true biofield, the same stature as gravity or magnetic field. Then what I propose to do is you should be able to find a corresponding attractor equation of the chaotic complexity, and this can be used as a mathematical model of the biofield of life. I propose a certain research initiative that I'm trying to find other people to help me with. The theory should be possible to take the simplest living organism, derive a complete chemical map of the organism indicating all the chemical interactions and energy states or exchanges that take place in the organism. Then find the particular attractor that represents the biofield of the life of the organism. Now, once you find that biofield, that attractor, that single equation, be a nasty thing, with the smallest actual living organism, then you can take away the different attractors for different chemical reactions. Or you can add new chemical reactions to it and see which ones maintain the complexity without destroying it. Or we can add or subtract other chemical reactions. Anything which would disrupt the attractor would also destroy the biofield and kill the organism and would not be subtracted out. Then subtract or take away different reactions, chemical reactions, equilibrium reactions, to derive the simplest functioning living organism. It's called devolution. We do devolution, the opposite of evolution, or we're doing it mathematically. This newly derived living organism would represent a new model of the very basis of life itself. Its development would be necessary to show that evolution and other properties of life. So we can evolve this attractor by adding more chemical reactions to it, or go the other way. Now, if you go all the way back to this original life form, mathematical life form, this should be a patentable form of life. I say that I can put a patent on this, and it's my goal to eventually patent life itself. Then I'm going to own the drug companies and give all the drugs people need away from me. I mean, like medicine drugs. There are other emergent complexities. That's one research initiative. The other emergent complexities are mind. Mind is a secondary complexity that operates the brain and body, and then a tertiary complexity called consciousness that connects mind life or the brain body in 4D space-time to the rest of the universe, thus defining itself. Now, mind and consciousness are far too difficult to derive using this chaos or nonlinear dynamics model from the bottom up, so we reverse our thinking and tackle the problem from the other direction. So from the other end of the spectrum, how does consciousness interact with the brain? So I have a new model of memory. The axon of the neuron is actually an LRC, inductor, capacitor, resistance, tuning circuit from freshman physics. The axon wall is a capacitor. The microtubules forming the neuron cytoskeleton are actually inductors. We have an axon, or we have a neuron on the left. Here's your basic neuron. Here's the axon. If you look at the side view of the axon, these are the walls of the axon. And you have sodium, potassium, chlorine ions. And as signals travel up and down the axon, basically you have capacitance in the axon walls. But inside the axon you have microtubules. This is a model of a microtubule. These are little tubulin molecules making up the cylinder, microtubulin. They have an alpha beta end, and these go into various electronic configurations. Now, if you get an electronic configuration going crosswise like this, you model it as a simple coil with wires 8 nanometers apart, just as various tubulins are 8 nanometers diameter. So you have the firing order like this, and according to the Hameroff and Penrose model of consciousness, this is the way they fire. So the little tubulins act as wires. When the tubulins along the road change their electronic state, they would act as if they are carrying wires in a coil. In this case, the microtubule would act like an inductive coil. So you have an LRC circuit. The LRC circuit is a tuning circuit for all radios and transmitters and receivers. Now this is nice. This is another side. This is your axon wall. These little microtubule. You've got a signal going up the axon wall. It sets off your microtubules in a specific order. That is a memory being formed. You picture these as little pixels, like a big picture. Each of those little firing microtubules would be a little pixel picture. So I'm looking at you out there. That puts a pattern of microtubule inductors in my mind that's imprinted in the 5-dimensional space-time continuum. Then if I look at you and recognize you, what happens is you've got a firing electric potential going down the axon wall the other way from my consciousness, and it picks out from my mind, the consciousness, the particular pattern, and that's how I recognize you, or anybody else or anything else. Okay, we have input in mind. Action potential moves up and down the axon from 5-dimensional senses, causing microtubules and axons to change in a specific pattern. This pattern is stored as memory in a 5-dimensional field density pattern called mind. Output from the consciousness. Conscious action from the memory in 5D pattern causes microtubules to fire in a specific pattern corresponding to stored memory. This causes an action potential to move down the axonal muscles, etc., or to initiate independent thought in the brain. This is a source of intuition as well as paranormal perception. B.
Thank you very much. A lot of interesting and challenging thoughts here, but we don't have time for questions. We need